I'll start by reading procedures. In order to facilitate the public's understanding and to maintain a complete and orderly meeting, the format and procedures will be as follows. The meeting is being electronically recorded and minutes are being taken. Minutes shall consist of a condensed summary of the facts of the meeting. Meetings are broadcast in their entirety on channel cable 1303 or Town of Camden YouTube. To maintain order, all comments or questions must be directed through the chair. Public comments are encouraged and important to this process. To maintain clarity, please exclude irrelevant and unduly repetitious comments. Each speaker must state his or her name, residence, and connection or interest in the topic prior to speaking. Please speak into the microphone. Have the microphones on. Speaker and committee members are requested to come to the meetings prepared to discuss matters in a clear and concise manner. Okay, item number 1 on the agenda, non-agenda items. Anybody have non-agenda items? No. Item 2, approval of October 2nd minutes. Anybody have any comments? No discussion? Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd.
Second? All approved? Let's see, who do we have voting now? We've got 1, 2, 5, nothing. Minutes approved. Number 3 is to finalize our last draft of the commercial passenger vessel license agreement. We've all had a copy of this to review. It reflects all the changes we've made from the last meeting. Any comment, discussion on this? Yes.
Elliot Thompson here. It's in my own thinking that this goes on to the select board as our recommendation for the
That's correct.
licensing
Well,
agreement.
the procedure here is this will go to town manager. Town manager and the attorney will give it a once-over. Then it goes to the select board. It's just recommendations for the select board.
Right.
So the attorney has not seen this yet, the town attorney? Okay. I have another question.
So, Chairman, I had some questions with continuity in how things were presented. And I'm happy to just, because I don't have any problem with the content of each of the items, but I felt like they weren't, like, for instance, all the different dated things are not necessarily in order. May 1st item is number 12. To my mind, that should go up to number 5. Items 8, 9, and 11 all relate to insurances, and it strikes me that those should go together and in fact might be able to be combined without losing or in fact creating more clarity. So it's just a matter of order, and I'm happy to give that to you, but I think in terms of readability and continuity, it could be improved just slightly, but content I didn't have too much of a problem with. I didn't have any problem with it, except for the question up with the boat owner, or the boat needs to be registered in the state of Maine. Is that a requirement of ours? Town of Camden is
It
the state
has
of Maine?
been. I mean, that verbiage there has been taken from the previous license agreements.
And is that something we feel strongly about, that the boat has to be registered in the state of Maine? What if it has?
It doesn't say registered.
Well, it doesn't,
Most of those
but it
boats are
says,
many of those boats are documented.
Yeah,
I would say
They're all
most are documented, federally documented, not.
not registered.
so, I mean, we state that it's state of Maine.
Well-
That was my question.
Well, we just say of, we don't say registered.
No, but because the boat's here in the state of Maine for this license, is that why we're? clarifying state of Maine? I just was wondering why that was there at all.
Yeah, I don't know if state of Maine needs to be there.
Yeah, that's my broader question.
Well, and like Appledore is not, I think
Right.
Appledore spends more time in Florida than in Maine now, so I would suspect that they would not be
Right. 'Cause-
of state of Maine, you know, be.
Right, right, because this is agreement with the town of Camden and the boat, where the boat is. That was minor, but I wanted to bring it up.
It's my impression that that introduction was merely for identification of the parties and not referring to the registration of the boat. Perhaps that's something for the lawyer to look at.
Don't trust it, they'll pick up on it.
Yeah. I would say
Check
that,
it out.
I would suggest we strike state of Maine there and just leave it as a blank of blank and blank, which operates the vessel.
Yeah,
Because we are, by doing that, we are kind of restricting them to agreements with entities based in Maine, I think.
Is that what we all want to do?
I support that.
Okay, strike state of Maine.
Strike it.
I had one question about just item 10, the insurance. Where do we, do you have that, Sandy? Is that the marine hull and P&I policies? Along with, I didn't know what those were, so I was,
Yeah, I guess that's my contribution through.
That's
Mark.
right.
So typically in a vessel owning situation, you want both marine P&I and hull coverage. P&I refers to protection and indemnity, which insures against third-party claims, but also contains some clauses that assist the vessel owner directly. And then hull insurance covers the value of the property. But again, there are things in that policy that, like a boat-to-blame collision clause that can in effect cover third-party situations as well. The terms P&I and hull are traditionally used to refer to generically marine policy coverages. They're well known in the industry and easily, easily referenced. And I've made clear that, you know, this situation where you're trying to cover against these marine risks, you're in a twilight zone area where, depending on the facts, it may or may not, excuse me, be a maritime situation. So you shouldn't do it to the exclusion of, sorry, I got a bad cold going. You shouldn't do it to the exclusion of workers' compensation or any other, longshore harbor workers or any other coverages that may pertain. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Yes, Sally.
Item 4 here, licensee subject to an annual review. Is that to apply to all commercial passenger vessels or just the day sailors? And it's my
it's on this
thinking.
document, it has to apply to all of them.
Exactly. Yep.
And, okay, I guess we hadn't been talking about the windjammers at length at all, so our conversations have been more specific to day sailors. But okay.
Why would we review day sailors and not windjammers?
I'm not opposed to it, I just wondered if that was our intent to apply it to both of them.
well, and this infers the commercial fishermen, too. Oh, sorry, this is passenger, never mind. Never mind, I'm thinking about the budget,
Yeah, get them all.
yeah.
Get some teeth in it.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, make a motion to approve the commercial passenger vessel license agreement for submission to the select board
As corrected?
as corrected. favor? Second, or well, we need a second?
Second.
Second? All in favor? 5-0. Okay, the next is commercial passenger vessel public landing day sailor addendum. So what we're doing on this is, we haven't finalized anything, so it's a discussion. Once again, how we're intending to proceed here is there seem to be three distinct issues with the day sailors. And so what we're gonna do is propose separate options for these issues. The issues are, number one, fees, which we don't necessarily have to address that in this agreement. We can address that when we discuss our fee schedule. Number two is placement of the tables on the docks. And number three is parking. So, do we have any discussion on this? Elliot?
I'll kick it off here. Regarding the placement of the ticket sales tables.
Yes.
On the boardwalk. It's my position that
Ticket sales, yes.
okay, ticket sales. I think for the near term, that things should stay as they are now.
Right, so what we have there under ticket sales, we have three options. Leave it as is, we have move to combined location, or we have charge additional fee for the dock space. All right, and these are the recommendations we're making to the select board, and we're gonna rank them how we feel. Let the select board make that decision.
Okay, and those items that you just cited, they're not on this document.
Right here, option 1, 2, and 3.
Sorry, fine print there.
What's the à la carte fee
Leave
structure?
as is.
That's the charge additional fees. You charge a fee for the,
Nice.
fee for the table, fee for parking, fee for the dockage. So, tell you what, for simplicity, why don't we just start with the beginning of the agreement? Paragraph A, fees. And how do we feel about that? Should we charge one fee, one flat fee? Should we charge a separate fee for dockage, table space, or parking? My feeling is just one fee.
Well, we're not talking about fees, but when I was looking at the fees, and I was astounded that we would spend so much time talking about the parking for the day sailors when they're paying $2,500 plus seasonal berthing, plus for those who want a second boat, plus overnight docking for those who need it. And the fisherman's float plus parking was a flat $400. So clearly, I don't understand what our preoccupation with one car park for a day sailor when we're essentially giving it away to the fishermen. Because that was outrageous to me. And so there's no way, until we have a little bit more equity with the fishermen's parking and situation with their fees, that I can in good conscience ask the day sailors to pay more or to be penalized for needing a car park.
So what we're talking about is one space?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the parking.
One space per boat, so that's 7 spaces for the day sailors.
And what happens with the fishing?
One space for 5 fishermen? You got 5 licenses for
Yeah,
fishermen?
there's more, but only 5 are active.
How many spaces are there for the fishermen?
There's 9 right now. Yeah.
Spaces.
Yeah. I think it'd be good if we took 2 of those away myself.
Well, how can there be 9 if there's only 5 paying the $400?
No, there's more, like Tibbetts, and again, it changes during the season. So in the beginning of the season, you've got the 2 Scott brothers, that they pay their fee, and they have their marine, barge, and they take care of moorings, do stuff, so they like to come there. Come summertime, when it starts to get busy, they're in Rockport, and they move their business there, and they do very little business, nor do they need a spot. I mean, that's something to be talked about at a different time, fisherman parties, but yeah, right now
Well,
there's
it's not
9.
really,
Okay,
because
well-
it's a relation to equity, and if we're thinking
So,
about
I mean,
assessing a
we've
fee to
just
these
moved on
guys.
to parking, right?
Well, no, we were including in the day sailor licensing, you said, let's make it 1 fee. And I'm saying absolutely, and we kind of need to stop talking about feeling bad for their car park. Because I don't. I
So, I
feel
mean,
like they're
maybe-
paying for it.
Maybe we should just, in terms of the 3 options, maybe we should say, I think, first of all, I think we should always have, leave as is, should be option 1, or 3, or whatever. And then, increase the fee, I don't know if we're gonna, I think that would be a separate discussion when we move to the fees, so just, increased, and then the à la carte thing, so that would be your 3, those are your 3 options, and then we would get to ranking them.
Right. So we'll just add in a as is.
Yeah, as is, and then maybe just say fee, increase fee or fee increase, but don't say what it's going to be, because we don't really know what it's going to be. That's a separate
But
discussion.
it should be inclusive,
Just fee,
whatever the fee is.
That would be inclusive, because the other, option 2 is the à la carte thing.
Right.
so, yeah, so we'll just call that an,
Fee increase.
sure, okay.
Mark, may I please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's just a little comment on the parking, for the difference between fishermen parking and our parking. Our parking is not designated parking, so sometimes in the middle of summer, a lot of the time, in the middle of summer, we don't even have a parking. We come in and the parking lot is full and we park somewhere else. Fisherman has 9 spots designated for fishermen. And a lot of the time, parking lot is full, and there's several.
And we've heard all this.
No, I'm
Just,
I'm just,
you haven't?
no, I just wanna clear that the big difference between the fishermen and our parking lot, and our parking permits, because it is a big difference.
It's a huge difference.
And it's a huge difference.
So you just put like a
Tag.
tag
Yeah,
that
we put
says,
a tag, but it's a tag that we have to park anywhere.
right,
If we
right.
find
You don't
spot.
get the front row.
No, and we don't have a designated parking either. Fishermen do have 9 spots, there are only 5 fishermen, and they have their own spot all the time. So I think that's a major difference, I wanna make clear.
And their spaces are immediately adjacent to their
Workspace.
I think there is, not to go off into the fisherman discussion too far, but there is support for the fishermen at the local and state level to encourage that kind of industry. I think it's in the comp plan. I know that there are provisions that specifically say that the town will do everything they can to support them. So I'm not sure, for example, that we could raise fishermen rates. It would require further investigation to be equitable, because I agree, on paper, it looks like, what's going on here? And I believe that is because the town is focused on supporting the fishing industry in particular. And it's a stated thing. Obviously, I'm not being articulate on that, but.
Ron?
I think this, it's as a result of maintaining working waterfronts in the entire state. And to suggest that running a day sailor is not as much work as lobstering part-time. They're supposed to be full-time, but nobody, how do we look into that? Who decides who's actually living, paying their mortgage and rent and insurances off of the income that they make lobstering, excluding any other income?
Yep.
It's that we're not even close when it comes to equity here. But the basis of it is working waterfront, and
That's correct.
day sailing, windjammers, it's as much work as lobstering.
But I think unfortunately certainly at the state level, they don't see it that way. The state does not see day sailors or anything other than fishing as working waterfront. And I think that's a problem.
That's not true. The state of Maine actually used all the windjammers like a tax-free sales tax. So like that's an advantage from the state of Maine that actually sees the day sailing or the tour operators as an asset. They also
Given that the tourism is the biggest industry in the state of Maine,
Yep.
it'd be really silly to overlook the fact that that's a huge contributor to a working waterfront.
I don't think that working waterfront support means that you have to give away the parking for free or whatever the fee is. You can't raise the fee.
Yeah.
If you were trying to raise it to a level where you were killing it,
Yeah,
then
good
you
point.
might have a problem, but to change the rate is not, I think, gonna be a problem.
Or subject them to the same à la carte. If we come up with an à la carte, they want to buy a parking spot, let them. But we haven't decided which way we're going, but I think,
I think it would be hard, really hard for us to make decisions, and so the fishermen could come and say, this is unfair, you don't really, it seems like you're not trying to help us out. I think everyone would say that we're bending over backwards for the fishermen. So if we were to take two of those spots away, or just say the select board, as a committee, you feel you could give two of those away. I've never seen all those, spots designated full, unless, if we do, it's because other people have said, well, there's so many empty, I'm gonna get that $20 ticket, I don't care.
So do they actually have, this boat's got this spot, or just?
Nope, it's all
they're
9 spots
just,
right in front of the
These are for
fishing area.
fishermen,
Yep.
come and get them.
Yeah, it's all blanked out in yellow, you can't park there. It says fishermen only, it's really scary. So, but I think you could definitely take two of those away and make them white, and get two more spots, and come back and visit. I mean, obviously, you guys can raise fishermen as well, but if you want to stay on track with where we are right now, that'd be my suggestion, take two of those spots away. When we talk about fees, we can talk about it then.
So, to stay on track, where are we at? We got three options. We'll leave it as is. We're talking about fees right now. So the fees would be, leave it as is. You increase fees, or you à la carte. And I think,
Can I ask a question? I'm not quite sure why, I understand the fishermen, because see the equipment come down, they gotta have their truck there and their boat there. If the day sailor parking is a thing, I'm not quite sure why day sailors are different than any other employee in town who has a hard time finding parking for the day.
see, and that's the dilemma we have.
So if it's really the convenience of the captain being able to know where their car is and they can go down there in the morning and take it.
there's been a lot of discussion about the importance of that car park for the effectiveness of their ability to run a business, and in the event of inclement weather, to use it as a safe respite, and it's equipment storage, and so it has been discussed.
It's an office on wheels.
I think it's an important part of them being able to do their job effectively.
And so, and that's the point, okay? I mean, we've discussed this extensively.
So I would vote for
So
as
we're
is.
at the point where, that's why it's up to the select board to make the decision. It's up to us to come up with the options, and the select board makes that decision
So I make a motion for as is.
with our recommendation, with no fee increase.
Right. Until we review all fees, I think what the day sailors are paying currently is generous.
I'd second that.
Okay, so, well, how are we gonna do that? We're gonna go, we've got 5 voting members, so who votes for,
Any more discussion on that? Because it's been seconded. Bring it to a vote.
well, what we're doing is
Right, the
What do you want to
fees.
choose? What do you want to recommend? This is what the
recommending a
committee-
choice,
Yeah, this is
okay?
your choice. Kathy's
So do we-
motioned it.
Seconded, which was as is, within the options.
Okay, as is. All right, option 1, as is. Who votes for as is? Okay. Or 1, as is.
That includes a la carte.
Pardon me?
That includes the.
No.
No, that's leaving the fee at
$2,500.
$2,500.
Well,
And
okay, I
there's
thought we were
Oh,
talking
I thought
structure,
We were talking.
that we were gonna discuss how much, when we talk about fees in general.
No, no, what,
That the concept was that stays as is, meaning that it's part of their annual fee. One of the perks is you get parking, as opposed to
Right.
it having a
no,
separate price
no,
tag.
I'm sorry. What I was voting on here was whether we leave the fee as is, or whether we recommend an increase in the fee.
Because we are at page 1A, fees, because we're going through the agreement.
Exactly.
And those 3 options, there were only 2, but we added a third, which was as is. That's where we are.
So
So let me-
Let's
let me
back this
Are
up,
we
all right?
having a discussion of fees and, I thought that one of the discussions Kathy was saying was, and we can talk about the amount of the fee when we talk about fees in general,
yes.
which is not saying we vote as is, this will not be discussed further in terms of the amount of the fee, which is, I think, what you're saying.
Yeah, no, what, I guess what I'm trying to determine here is do we leave the fees at $2,500? Do we suggest an increase in the fees,
It's option 2.
option 2? Or do we change the fee structure
A la carte.
to an à la carte?
Okay.
Okay?
Are we, in general, going to be discussing other fees?
Yes, yes. So, and so we're gonna, that's on the agenda to discuss the fee structure.
So what I'd suggest is we first vote on whether we want to à la carte it.
Yes,
And if that gets rejected, I would say let's just, we don't really need to vote on the other 2 right now because we're going to be discussing fees. And that's the time to say, let's leave the fee where it is. Because you're discussing all sorts of fees, am I correct?
okay, that's reasonable.
Why don't we, if we don't want to do à la carte, just get that out of the
Someone make a
way.
motion that you don't want to do a la carte.
But we're still going to suggest,
We're gonna-
we're going to
as an
present
option.
these as options that we've discussed.
Yes.
That's what the select board wanted, was us to tell them what our options we discussed.
Because most importantly, I would think, through the chairman, that it's important that the select board hear that I don't, but I also am hearing that we don't have a problem with the table situation as it currently exists. Because
So-
that's a concern that they're
So
going to not
how's
hear
this for a
that.
recommendation, all right? That the committee recommend option 1 or option 2. That's what we're voting on right now.
Why don't we,
That make sense?
I think I'd be more comfortable just taking 3 off the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on to tables. Then when we're talking about all the fees, that's when you can discuss, well, do we want to raise the day sailor fee? Is it right with the other stuff, whatever?
The reason I would like to leave à la carte on the table is just because it's something we've discussed, and I would like the select board to understand that we have discussed this option and feel it's not appropriate.
That'll be on the table. They'll
That's
see
what the
that
motion
as an option.
would say.
So our motion is we vote 0 for à la carte.
Yes.
We don't like no à la carte.
Okay.
So where it's nothing.
We went salad with our steak.
It's an option of someone opting out of paying for a parking space if they don't feel they need it?
No.
That would require it to be à la carte.
Right.
So we are saying, no, you're just,
You get a parking spot
get a
if you
parking
pay
s-
X fee.
All one thing.
Yeah, I understand, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So you're not allowing them the option to save some money by not paying
Correct.
for a parking space.
Correct.
It's
Why
true,
would you do that?
That's the way it is now.
because
what it
quite
is.
honestly, the proposed fees for the à la carte are punishing. Like, you'd still be paying the full freight plus then paying an exorbitant amount for a parking spot that we're giving away to other people, which is my take on it, but
Yeah. What it
so-
does, it just complicates the issue far too much. You know,
That's part of the fee discussion.
absolutely.
When we get there.
Yeah. So the
But if-
committee, right now, there's a motion on the table, I think, to say that out of these options that you want to present to the select board that you talked about, you guys don't like the à la carte option.
right.
let me ask you a
And
question.
we're-
In terms of the fishing deal, that's also all included. It's not a separate charge.
Yeah. Yep. So is there a motion on the table? And has it been seconded? For the-
It has, and I think we voted, we're all in favor to, we're all against option two. I'm sorry, option three,
No à la carte.
which is no à la carte.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's next? What are we discussing? Because that's already been voted on. What are we going to talk about?
B, schedule. Everybody agree with that paragraph?
I don't have it in front of me. What are we talking about?
Is that,
Master's schedule of arrival and departure times as established by himself. And if anyone has a question with it, they've got to talk to him. That's the way I read it.
yep.
And it's established. Like, has anyone ever come to you and said, you know what, I need to be third, I
All the
don't
time.
know.
In the last 6 years, it went up, there's some crazy changes, we all work together, it's where it is right now, and we like it. Every once in a while, Dom will say, geez, is it okay if I change this to 5 minutes? I need to come 5 minutes earlier, and I would look, and if everyone else is like, fine, we don't care, because we don't need it, then it happens. If all of a sudden someone's upset, then we have to get together, and we do, we all have coffee, and we talk about it, how are we gonna change this? Because it has to do with one business saying, this is really gonna help my business, because I'm gonna try to do this different trip, and it's, no one's on the dock, and so we talk about it, so, and it works. So right now, it's set, and it's good.
So it works, and basically, this paragraph is from the previous agreement.
Yeah.
So we're all good there. C, conduct. Most of that comes from the original agreement.
Should we include in that some mention of this annual review, which is essentially, I mean, it is covered in the commercial passenger vessel
It's
license?
covered in the commercial passenger, and what feedback I get from the town is that they don't want to be repetitious. And because what I did was the insurance, I put in both agreements, the addendum and the agreement. You said simplify it. Dockage.
This represents a change from the current language,
It's,
15 minutes to 30 minutes.
This is going from 30, yes.
And what's the harbor master say about that?
What are we talking about?
Package.
Dockage.
And,
Going from 15 minutes to 30 minutes as the day sale is requested.
I personally don't think that, it's been working for the last, 25 years like this, I don't see why we should change it. I think you're just asking for trouble, because that means, right now, they only get 15, but they ask for 45 or 2 hours sometimes if no one's using it. Jim French used to come down and say, park the boat there, the town boat, and say, no, this is town time, don't get on the dock, to show them that, but I don't think that's necessary. I believe that if they need the time, oh, can I stay here another 15 minutes because, Dom's not running a trip, go ahead. But if they now ask for half hour, now we gotta start redoing everything. It works the way it is, that's my take.
suggestion?
Sure.
Instead of like giving it a time limit, can you just say, Steve is set, like we have that schedule that's set, follow the schedule that is set? Have duration of the time of the float be no longer than what the schedule says? Because the whole reason we would like that change is that we have tried to put breaks into our day. We're there for like a half hour so we can get lunch. So at one point, some of us had longer ones. I was one of those people. I've dropped all of them to 30 minutes just to be fair. Right? Like there were longer breaks in there. The Surprise had longer breaks. We have been reducing the amount of time overall in the course of the day on the schedule that we were sitting in.
Well,
But
'Cause
the
I've never
15
seen the
minutes doesn't
schedule.
reflect the schedule part that we're handing to Steve.
Yeah, it does, actually. And everything else is me saying, I think it can work if, you know, if everyone works together.
I mean,
I think here's the thing, what about if we combine schedule and dockage in the same paragraph? Because it's all about the same thing. Right? And then just, and then eliminate the time limit. So that Steve would regulate that. Does that make sense?
Gets arbitrated when they set up their schedule.
Right.
My
I'm
question,
conf-
I have a question.
I'm confused what the 30-minute thing is meant to add to the, maybe that's what you're all saying, but what's the 30-minute thing meant to do when you've already set the schedule?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure, because right now the town has it as, it's always been, if you have a vessel that you're taking passengers for hire, this is the town dock that you can actually use to pick up and drop off people. When you come to the dock, you can't stay more than 15 minutes. That's what the reason, and with that, and now the fact that we have 7 boats, you come in, you don't dally, you get your passengers on or off, and you leave. In the past, a boat will come in and say, well, there's no boat coming in after me. They're out sailing for 2 hours. Do I have to leave? No. I guess you don't. Stay there. As long as no one hasn't canceled their trip or they have a medical emergency, they gotta come back to stay there. So now, since it's been, you know, over the years and we're letting them do that, now they want, let's change it to a half hour. So we definitely know we can have a half hour. So that's taking away a little bit of my authority in the town's ability to say what you can and can't do. That's why I don't like it.
This would be restricting your ability to set a schedule because it would, you have to work in half-hour increments and not 15 minutes.
Correct. In the future, that's what's gonna happen. The next harbor master will have that difficulty, unless we go with 2 docks, which has been proposed instead of 1 dock. But I think for now, leave it at 15.
Used to be 2 dogs.
Too small.
The middle and the road.
So, Just,
possible.
we've never seen the schedule.
So,
Is the schedule actually in 15-minute increments? I've never seen the schedule.
oh my word.
I don't, I'm not asking
Come
to
to my
see the
office.
schedule,
I've
but I'm
looked
just,
at it, I mean, it is mind-boggling.
It's amazing. But it works. That's why I'm saying don't screw with it.
I don't see why we're increasing this.
well, because we were asked to, and so we've discussed it, and now it's been put forward, but.
Yeah.
So,
Is
so my,
this meant to mean that every time a day sailor comes in, they get at least 30 minutes every
It
single
means
time?
they can get 30 minutes.
No more than.
Can I just one more time, just try to explain what we're asking for? Because I understand Steve's point in the authoritarian part. I get it. Like, he needs to be able to say, but our schedule doesn't reflect 15-minute breaks. Some of them are 15 minutes, some of them are 30-minute breaks at the dock. So if we were doing 15-minute breaks only, right, that would mean that I would unload my passengers at 11:45 or 12 o'clock. I would hop off the dock and hover for 15 minutes and then come back and put my boat on the dock for another 15 minutes and then go. Does that make sense?
Oh, but my concern is that this seems to be establishing that Steve cannot ask you to be there for less than 30 minutes.
But if he said, you know, it happens where he's asked us to get off the dock for, doesn't happen very often, but somebody needs to unload and load way out of his schedule, and he'll send us a memo saying, on this day, we need to do this so that Dom can take a group of people out to Islesboro and back. has a separate charter, so could we clear the dock off for that spot?
So
But
we
So I'm sort
ran
of
into
confused,
this
because
issue.
If, in theory, you got 4 boats in and out in an hour, and now this would say, well, if everyone says, you know,
what if,
I'm exerting my rights, now you get 4 boats in 2 hours. And does
I
that really
understand.
help you guys?
I think it's hard because the schedule thing is crazy, but hard to do, like, try to distill that schedule in like a 5-second conversation is impossible. It really is, but if you look at the schedule, you'll see that we've agreed to breaks with each other and Steve. But maybe what it needs to say is if we are not adhering to the schedule, then he can tell us that we have no more than 15-minute increments on the dock. Would that be better, Steve?
Not really.
No?
All right, so what we did in the license, or the insurance, for example, all right? First of all, I mean, when we worked through all this, we required insurance to be submitted by May 15th, and then June 15th, and all of a sudden, we realized, well, who cares when they submit it? They just need to be insured. So we don't need to overregulate a date certain. And same as maybe we don't need to regulate a time certain here. If we take, and we've got our schedule in B, and then if, under dockage, if we eliminate the first paragraph and then just say, the licensee shall minimize the vessel's time at the float insofar as possible to accommodate other vessels. Simple as that, you know? And then the harbor master has authority.
Settle some dispute.
Yes.
So you're saying take the sentence about the time
The
right
time
out.
limit, take the time limit
Basically
right out.
move the other sentence just up into the schedule.
Paragraph B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just, if the day sailors all agreed amongst themselves that a half-hour break was appropriate, then why wouldn't the harbor master go along with it?
Right.
It's their business.
So, you know, and so you want the half-hour break at lunchtime, per se, and 15-minute breaks work at midday, and it's all up to you to regulate that.
Another little note, when you take, if you have to move the boat from the day sailor's dock, what do you do with it? You gotta-
All kinds of options.
Where's the boat go?
Sometimes we sit out at Curtis Island, sometimes we could, you know, if there's no holes, we slow, like in June, we might just lay up on the long floats if there are a lot of empty ones. Sometimes we just have to sit in the harbor and wait, you know, just have to sit at the head of the harbor.
But that's the thing, if you're just idling, wasting time, if you haven't got a place to put the boat where you can actually walk on and off.
I mean, that's why that master schedule is so important, is that we know when we can do stuff, when we need to do stuff, and we know when we can't.
So I'm a little reluctant to remove the sort of the baseline, which is really what the 15-minute is. That gives Steve something, you know, in a contract that he can point to say, no, you know, you need to move off. However, we are creating a new mechanism for reviewing the day sailors, which is this annual review, and this, I suppose, would be part of that. So if, for example, any of the businesses were being difficult about, you know, working together and putting the harbor master up against a wall a little bit, then that would be reflected in that
Comes up
annual,
at the-
that would come up in the annual review. So it does provide a certain amount of accountability, I guess you could say.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Is the duration that we're speaking about, whether it's 15 or 30 minutes, is that for loading, offloading and loading? Are you turning around a boat in 15 minutes?
May I answer that?
Yes.
So the schedule is divided in 15-minute slots, okay? The whole entire summer, it's just 15-minute slots for each of the 7 boats. Some slots are double, so sometimes we come within 15 minutes, unload, and load the next trip and go out, all in 15 minutes. Some trips especially most of the boats in the lunchtime that run noon, has 2 slots, and that's the half an hour we're talking about, to try to keep those half an hour slots as half an hour and not change it to 15 minutes. So that, I think, this was a concern of Aaron to try to like keep as minimum as 30 minutes, so we don't lose those 30 minutes breaks, I'm sorry. So Steve mentioned that he is not willing to change the schedule and keep those 30 minutes that some boats have in the middle of the day as 30 minutes and not as 15 minutes. So, and that was the concern about trying to change it to 30 minutes, but
Yeah,
that's
and
what it is.
I think what prompted this trepidation that Aaron has is that when the Sally, the vessel Sally came in, was that 2-3 years ago, Ray came in and said, well, this boat isn't scheduled to be here at this time, and I want to run on the hour, 1-hour trips. I want to come in for the allotted 15 minutes, and of course, the OLAD had been for years taking a half-hour spot, even though, okay, they come in, this is when you come in, you're scheduled to come in here, and 15 minutes you got to leave, but they never did, because they didn't have to. So now Ray's like, well, since that's technically not part of the schedule, you're just getting a little grace 15-minute period, I want that spot. And we were able to say, he was able to convince me, the new member, saying, well, I guess you're right, you know, you want this schedule, you're asking for it, and we changed some of them. And so that's what I'm thinking your fear is.
But,
Well-
and the reason he did that is because it states in the agreement what the time limit is.
Yeah.
So if it was not in in the agreement, and you said, no, that just doesn't work, then that's it.
Yeah, so in a sense, there's less flexibility for new vessels and vessels changing, coming in and out, if I only have a half hour. Is it easier for them? Yeah. So it all depends what you guys want. And do you want that dock to not just be a place for folks to run, you know, their basic day sail business, picking passengers up and letting them up, but do you want them to stay there and have lunch? Do you want them to fit out their boats in the spring? Do you want them to stay, you know? It all depends what the town wants that folk for.
This seems to, the way I would be reading it ignorantly, it seems to be saying that every time they come in, they get a 30-minute slot and don't have to ask permission. That's not just the lunch break, that's every break, every time they touch the float.
If it's scheduled for that, like right now, it's not scheduled for that.
No, but that's what this is saying, is
That's, yeah.
that they get 30 minutes, they can't stay there more than 30 minutes without your permission.
We don't
It
want
doesn't
that.
infer that you can say, well, you don't get 30 minutes at 9 in the morning.
It was not suggested that was not.
Well, that's what it
But
says.
that's what it
Well,
says.
okay, but that was this.
So what you're talking about is, you really would like to be able to have one stop a day that's at least 30
No, what we'd
minutes.
like to do is keep the schedule as it is, and just keep whatever the
I know.
30 minutes breaks that we have as it is, and not change it to 15 minutes,
but-
that's what we want.
But like the part of this that's missing, or why we have like fears about changing this, is like easy to explain in the sense that if we have always had a trip that leaves at 12:30 and we have one trip coming in at 12, right? How do you change if you've turned it into 15-minute breaks? It's not like I've changed my schedule. The schedule stayed the same for 15 years. But the change, if you try to like separate that spot, put another boat in that little half-hour break, then now suddenly I have a 12:15 trip. But I already have people scheduled for a 12:30 trip. You see how that would change? So we're not changing schedule. We're still doing things the way we are. It's
But
just
you're,
that-
then why are we changing the minimum?
Yeah.
I don't know why we have them in.
I think the town wants that flexibility to change, even though it's been the same. I think, we
Right,
want.
but this, it seems to me that if it stayed at 15, it's increasing your control of the flexibility and keeps the as yet unknown day sailor who will come in next year and be obnoxious about it and say, every time I come in, I get 30 minutes.
Well, if they ask for the change, if they say, this vessel comes in at 12 o'clock, why are they staying till 12:30?
I'm just
Right now-
saying,
right now, it's like
this
gravy.
this one sentence, in and of itself, would give someone who doesn't know how it's already been done, the understanding that every time they touch the dock, they get a minimum of 30 minutes.
Well, no, it does say no more than.
without permission.
It sounds like we could actually eliminate D altogether and just stay with B, which is shall adhere to the master schedule. Because if the master schedule works and allows for flexibility and is done in coordination with the whole team, and there's still always play with the
That
harbor
was my
master.
point, and, but you still add the last sentence of that, of paragraph D.
So, yeah, that everyone's mindful of each other's
Yes.
relationship with the dock.
Exactly. That-
The Day Sailors document from a few months ago, you had your list of issues and things for discussion. And the statement was, change language in license, 30-minute maximum break between trips to reflect the current day sailor schedule.
Yeah.
So you were asking for a change to, so that it stated 30-minute maximum break between trips.
I think the idea is to
Right.
keep the schedule as it is, and if you have a 30-minute slot, just keep it as it is and not change it. That's, I think, is what we trying to do.
And how do you know if you have a 30-minute slot or not? You look at the schedule.
The Grand Poobah establishes that.
It's a
The
required.
schedule has been, we've been using all 7 boats, by the way. We've been using the same schedule for the last at least 4 years, without modifications. So like, it's set for a long time. I mean, Schooner Surprise schedule probably has been set for over 20 years. So it's all that.
Okay, so you concluded that on your list of issues. Was that because there were problems in working that out?
Well, because there's a threat every time somebody comes along to change the schedule, and it's like, that's great if somebody wants to change the schedule, but trying to change the schedule in the off-season, or once you've already started selling tickets for the next year, right? Then you have to call people back and tell them, sorry, the town has changed their schedule, and now I can't do that trip. It's tricky as a business owner to navigate. It's like the schedule that we've set over there seems to be working for everybody. And I know that somebody will come along and buy a different boat at some point or want to change the schedule that they have. But we've all been working it out, and we've worked it out with Steve. I mean, it's not like he's not involved when we put the schedule together. Is that, I just want to not put words in your mouth, Steve, that's why I am.
No, that's correct in saying.
So I think that however that needs to be put together, it needs to be put together in a word that says, with the approval of the harbor master, because otherwise we're just gonna have conflicts, and we don't wanna have conflicts. That's what we're trying to avoid, is any conflicts. Just to have the actual license go along with what we.
Yeah, but see, what gets me is that in the schedule, it'll have a yellow thing saying this is when the surprise comes in. And then it'll have another yellow one after it, another 15-minute slot, saying this is the schedule. Even though the maximum is 15 minutes to actually be at, that's what you're scheduled for, we know that over the last 10 years, the surprise stays to have lunch, and they stay another 15 minutes, and then they load.
Yeah.
Now, that flexibility, so when we go to make another schedule, is something the town wants. I don't think the town should move it to a half hour. That was my initial, stance, and I'm keeping at that. It's working right now. I think the town doesn't want to give up that flexibility, and that's my take. You can change, you can request to change it to the select board if you want to.
But should there be any, I guess the question that I have is, should there be any time limit, or should it all defer to the master schedule that you create? Should there be, let's take 30 minutes off the table for a minute, just for argument's sake, and say, should it even say 15, as it currently does?
I
Or
think there's
should
a
it
reason they
just
put that there in the beginning, 30 years ago. And so I think that if you take that away, then slowly this thing could morph into another 10 years as of, well, they're here for a half hour, why don't you, maybe we should let them stay for an hour. It depends who the harbor master is and
But would they want to do that? Because what that would do is it would just, it seems like it would restrict the amount of trips that they could actually run. So why would they want to?
In 10 years from now, this might morph into something totally different, because I think that this whole arrangement has morphed into something totally different in the 20 years that I've been there. Things have changed all the way through. Boats have come and gone, different operators, different schedules.
Go ahead, Ron.
think 15 minutes was there originally, 30 years ago, as part of the contract, to say, you know you're gonna have 15 minutes. Guaranteeing 15 minutes. No. It was a minimum, not a maximum.
That is correct.
Right.
Right, and it,
That was the basis. for-
And Steve, actually, tell me if I'm wrong, Steve, you mentioned to all of us at least, to say that you're gonna respect and keep the schedule for each one of the boats, even if another boat owner comes in and tries to change it, is that correct?
Can you say that again?
Well, for example, like, we have a boat has a half an hour break in yellow on the schedule, and another boat comes in and says, well, I want that second 15 minutes of
Sally
that
comes
boat.
back.
You will say no, because that boat already been having that schedule and set, and you can have one that is not used, but not the one is already set for that boat.
now we're talking about fishing grounds.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the town wants me, the town would give me the authority to say, oh, sure, you got a good thing going, and I'm not gonna let anyone else change the schedule, so I really can't say yes to that.
Yeah.
All right, if you, if this scenario is gonna happen, if another boat or another boat owner requests that 15 minutes is being used for another boat, is that we need to change the whole entire schedule. Because all of a sudden, if I leave at 12:30 and now I have to leave 12:15, my trip comes back 15 minutes earlier and now modifies the whole schedule along on the whole entire day. So now we have to change the whole entire schedule for all 7 boats.
Yeah.
And you know, that's extremely difficult.
That's not easy, but I think we're coming to the very crux of the problem here, or the issue, is that the town day sailor float is for the town of Camden, not specifically for your business. Now, I think we all can say that we're very lucky to have the Schooner Surprise and the Schooner Olad here. And I don't want to, by getting down to the line here and really talking about the issue that we're talking about, I want to make sure you know how much the town values your boats. But at the same time, this is the town day sailor float, not the Surprise and Olad float.
No, we are. You don't wanna
So
do that.
what you're asking to do is you're asking to take some of the flexibility from the town away, so in the future, it ensures that this schedule that you have had the luck of having can't change. I don't say it's gonna, but I think the town wants to reserve the right that it may.
Absolutely.
But I think that,
Okay.
that you can do that with
We're
the
not
other,
discussing that.
the other section of this,
Thought we
with
were.
the
The
schedule.
town has designated it as a day sailor float,
Exactly.
and they're charging money for it.
Yeah,
So they're paying, it's not luck, they're paying for privilege.
yeah,
It's a
to
privilege, which
use,
can be denied.
to use that float,
Yeah, so it's a day sail float,
exactly.
which the town has designated. Yeah, the town owns it, the town maintains it.
And there's 7 permits.
But you've already decided, just like you did when you voted to, the select board voted to change the fisherman's wharf from a wind general wharf to a fisherman's wharf. Boom, done. You've established that's the fisherman's dock now. You established a day sail dock, and you're charging good money for it.
I'd
And
like
you can't,
And I
you
think we
can't, you
should.
can't say that they,
That town-
rather, they're not entitled to it.
Well, I'm not saying that. Maybe if I said that, if that words come out, what I meant was that the schedule now is the way it is, and it benefits everybody. I think we should keep the flexibility, so in the future, if the town needs to, or wants to, we can have that flexibility to change that schedule that's gonna best fit the day sailor dock.
Absolutely, true.
That goes back to B, schedule. That doesn't,
I just want to say I'm very grateful to be on that dock, and thank you.
Grateful to have you.
Go deliver a boat, and I have to get in my car and drive to an airport.
Be safe.
so, Thanks, I'm sorry, I wish I could stay the whole meeting, it just didn't work out. Thank you,
Stay away from the mature.
Thanks for coming.
and keep the shiny side up.
I think we should leave it the way, leave the overall language the way it is, except go back to 15 minutes. I think that 15 minutes serves a purpose of essentially establishing a minimum turnaround time. Maybe on a light day, you do it faster, but the bottom line is to get people on, off, someone, whatever. It's the reason why it was there, as Ron was saying, and I think that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're getting into all sorts of other issues as you start discussing it. which is always a reason to never request something to be amended, because you never know the other stuff that comes up too. I would just leave it, say 15 minutes, let the grand poobah work his schedule, so that they occasionally have longer time. This is just establishing the expectation that he won't say, now you've got to load your boats in 5 minutes.
Seconded.
Do we all agree? 15 minutes?
My only question is it ever difficult for someone to get hold of you during the court, because it's without the permission of the harbor master? I mean, are you or a designee, generally speaking?
Well, no, because
Easily
they're already, by putting the block of yellow under the boat after 15 minutes in the schedule, they don't need to get hold of me, because
Okay.
that's the schedule. Every once in a blue moon, Dominic might say, is it okay, there's no one on the town docks, can I park my vessel, because I've got 80-year-olds that need to get off and get step right onto another boat, or they have to go up the ramp, go across, go down another ramp to get onto my boat. This is for the cruise ships. And he'll call me up on the cell phone, and I'll be like, yeah, no problem, you know.
How about making a statement that, leaving it at the 15 minutes, and you can be on the dock longer, subject to approval from the harbor master?
I mean, it already
Some words to that effect.
That's what it says. That's why it's working.
Without, okay.
So, we all in agreement, 15 minutes?
Yes.
Ticket sales.
Make a motion that we leave as is.
Three options for the ticket sales. Leave as is, move to combined location, or charge additional fees for the ticket sales table. All in favor of option one, leave it as is. Okay. That was an easy one.
Keep going quickly.
Well, the exhaustion factor is still in place.
Is that because Aaron just left?
Second, Bo will do that next, but the next one is parking.
Does the second boat need to be, like, item F, does that need to be included in this? That's a second.
I don't
that's
even think that needs to be there.
It's a separate
Issue.
issue. It's a separate agreement. So I don't see how
Yeah,
that.
just to simplify it, just cross it off, huh?
I favor that.
Okay.
So you're saying insurance is the repeat, which is fine?
Yeah.
Sandy, do you have any comments about the limits stated for the day sailors?
The insurance is gone off of this. It's on the
Oh, it is.
initial
Item G
agreement.
is gone altogether.
But it's my
a
recollection
different copy
that
than I do.
the windjammers and day sailors have different limits on their current agreements.
I think Sandy combined it all to,
Yeah, I mean, in risk management, the general rule is get as much insurance as you can reasonably afford. But I guess here, what's happening is the town is imposing a minimum. It doesn't seem that, looking at it, there's a reason to have a difference if the risks are.
button.
Doesn't seem to be that there's a reason to be a difference if the risks are the same. So I think that, as I understood what you were doing, you had made a prejudgment that the risks are different given the sizes of the vessels, you know, what the operation was, the number of people, and that type of thing.
Only for
Yeah.
past agreements.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So, I don't,
The windjammers are $1 million in the current agreement.
Day sailors are higher, more people on and off, more chances of twisting.
yeah, I'm not making that judgment. I'm just saying,
So what is the day sailor limit?
500. It says not less than 500 for public liability.
it may be that the town's insurance folks want to take a look at this. Because if you're talking about risk assessment, those are the people that have all the statistics and the numbers and probably can, maybe, I guess it's MEMIC in this case, could best advise on what those levels should be.
Well, and I propose that we state to the select board that.
Suggest that.
We suggest that they look at those liability and personal injury amounts and determine what is appropriate. And it's not really for us to define that.
Yeah, it's possible that 30 years ago, Ron, tell me if I'm wrong, but the Windjammers were full, and they were the really big thing, and the day sailors was this new thing, not new thing, but starting out, and it wasn't as popular. Now, it's almost shifted. The day sailors are running much more, and they are carrying many more passengers. They're getting on and off the boat all the time, so maybe it'd be good if they looked at that. Be a good
So, and the way we should separate that is right now, because we've standardized it for both, it's on the original license agreement. But if we determine there should be different coverages, it should go on the addendums rather than the license agreement.
Yeah, if it's different, then it would go on each addendum.
Right.
And if it's the same, then it would go on.
Stays on.
Yep.
Yep. Okay,
But we will recommend to the select board that
Yes.
that's something they pursue.
to review that, yes.
Okay.
So, where are we now? We're at parking?
Uh-oh.
And again, all right, what we're doing is we are presenting options. All right? We're just presenting different options for the select board to review. And then we'll recommend how we feel. So,
Can I just say that you only presented two options, and I'd like to add a third, as is, that it's included in their fee.
yes.
I'm not, I don't think I'm in favor of each violation being a cause for suspension, may be a cause for suspension. I can see this parking abuse being a end-of-season review discussion item. But I don't know, I never liked this statement. It seemed like it was an awful big penalty hanging out there for a parking abuse, that sometimes an operator doesn't have control over what his employees are doing. And I would like to offer,
Already, I mean, they get a ticket.
yeah, they already get a ticket.
Well, I mean, what Aaron has told me, that if he ever catches one of his employees parking down there when they're not supposed to, he fires them. That's what he told me.
Then you gotta find a replacement, but that's not easy.
No,
Yeah, right, and this is a pretty severe thing, hanging out.
just saying, I'm just,
I had a discussion with Scott, Parking Authority, and he went through with Google in the parking lot, some images he had from a typical summer day. And I think we counted, there were 72 parking spaces down there. And he knows who owns each car. And he was able to identify all the cars in the parking lot, and approximately half, 35, I believe, he counted, were employee parking.
Of somebody.
Of somebody.
Some business.
Yeah,
Downtown
of
business.
day sailors, of restaurants, and he went on to describe how some of the restaurant people will, they'll just get the ticket. And, they get the ticket, it's part of their cost of living, the cost of having a job down there, I guess. And, but approximately half the spaces on a typical crowded day were people working down there. And, so I just think that this is a pretty severe measure to have that statement in there. It's
It is.
certainly a review item.
it
If your
is, I mean,
employees are
and I think
abusing-
the whole intention was of that was to make it just self-regulating, so that, it's harsh.
It's too severe.
I think because it's going to be part of the review, I would say we strike that. It just comes across a little heavy. Since every violation of every aspect of this agreement may be, it's sort of, it's unnecessary. I wondered about the prohibition parking there from July 1st through September 31st. I thought we were talking about September 1st or
Yeah, we were, October, or,
August 31st.
the
or
month
whatever it
before
is.
that,
Yeah.
August.
This is just the second vote again, correct?
No,
No, we're
we're
on
still
the
on
day
the
sale.
day sailor.
The public landing addendum.
Okay, so, where is it?
I do have one question, Mark, regarding this, if we've reached the end of this one.
I guess that sentence is also in the second vote addendum, so it's getting deleted on one, it's getting deleted on the other.
Yes. So,
Well, we haven't voted on parking. I made a motion.
yeah, so,
I'll make a motion. No, I said just we add an option 3, and I'd like to make a motion that we go with option 3, which is remaining as is. That parking is
yeah,
included in
what,
the-
so what I've done here, and I don't think you have a copy of it, I've done option 1 as is. And then I've printed out exactly, copied it from the original agreement, as is. Then option 2 is, the licensee shall prohibit any employee, supplier, contractor, or agent of the licensee or any crew member of the day sailor vessel from parking in the parking spaces at the public landing, with the exception of one vehicle owned or used by the licensee for no more than 2 hours. And then we eliminated the, each violation may be suspension.
Sorry, Mark,
And then,
could you mind repeating that, do you say with the exception of a vessel?
Of a car. So option 1.
with the exception
includes
of
the
one vehicle owned or used by the licensee for no more than 2 hours. Okay, so what that does is the current situation for the parking is none of their employees are allowed to park there. They have a permit for one vehicle. Okay,
To
so-
park all day.
to park all day. Okay, so what this does is it does the same thing, but it limits that one parking permit to just 2 hours.
No, no,
That's just an option we're
that's not
putting
how,
out there.
that's not how it reads.
It's not?
But
It
that's
says,
what the whole
it says
town
you've
does.
got a permit to
That's-
park all day.
That's the parking regulation.
Employees can't be allowed,
Licensee.
employees can't park there more than 2 hours.
Legally.
I think that's the intent, but as I was hearing it read, I don't think that's what it said.
Well, that's what the sentence
There's a
structure, that's
comma.
what the sentence
Let me
structure
read
says.
it again. The licensee shall prohibit any employee, supplier, contractor, or agent of the licensee or any crew member of the day sailor vessel from parking in the parking spaces at the public landing.
Full
Period.
stop.
It's a comma, but,
Okay,
Right.
okay, comma.
all right?
Then it mentions the lease.
With the exception of one vehicle owned or used by the licensee for no more than 2 hours.
Right,
Yeah,
no more
so
than
you
2 hours.
screwed it up. The
applies to
2 hours should be
Right
up
after,
front of the comma.
right before the comma, exactly.
But that's just the parking regulation. Nobody's allowed theoretically to park more than 2 hours down at the
I
landing.
mean, yeah, technically,
What's-
employees can park for 2 hours if they want.
Or
but-
get the fine, like the waitress.
Anybody can park.
The way I understand it, all right, the agreement as it stands says that none of their employees can park down there. Period. All right, for the 2 hours.
That's the
for
current
any
agreement?
Period.
That's the current agreement that they're
Yes.
all
Is that your
operating?
understanding?
I don't think that is correct. I'm sorry, I don't know if this is how I understand it. We tell our crew not to park in there, but I don't think in the agreement says anything, anywhere that.
I don't see that the town could
our
enforce that.
employees can not park.
Because
in there.
I would
you're-
just describe that they don't.
Yeah, the town can't say that you can, sorry, Siri.
It's discriminatory. You can't let everybody else on the planet park for 2 hours
Right.
and not let day sale crew people park for 2 hours.
Discriminatory, that's exactly it.
You can't do it.
That's, I don't think that would hold up, yep.
Well, or you move your car,
Please, don't
What's
do
that?
anyway.
or you move your car.
Right, or you take the fine, if the parking guy's doing his job.
All right.
We try to be proactive with the town and with this issue, and we recommend, and we tell all our customers not to park in there. And we tell all our employees not to park in there, because, we know the issue, but I don't think there is in the agreement, this is just our decision.
The current,
Here's the original agreement. You have it there?
I have the
Wanna read it?
current 2019
Yep.
agreement.
Okay.
And there's a paragraph about parking here. The last statement, sentence is, in accordance with Chapter 8, Schedule 12 of the Parking Ordinance, Town of Camden, this one parking space is available to the licensee only during the time that the licensee operates a vessel from the town float in accordance with the Harbor and Waterways Ordinance and for the commercial purposes allowed by this license. So that's stating that they get a parking spot for the time that they're working the boat.
That's referring to the permit, to the tag that they
Right.
hang on the mirror.
Right.
Just,
Not to the.
Now read the first
Okay,
paragraph.
the licensee shall prohibit any employee, supplier, contractor, or agent, or licensee, or any crew member of the day sailor vessel from parking in the parking spaces at the public landing, with the exception of one parking space for one vehicle owned or used by the licensee or an employee of the licensee.
So what does that tell you?
Says we're
This-
doing it right now.
That-
Yeah, it says we're discriminating it right now. We are. So I'm
I
surprised.
mean, discriminate is a pretty strong word. I mean,
I
this is
think-
just a,
Well, if
I
they're
think
at
what you
risk of
really wanna
losing their
do
license.
is get the one permitted spot that's all day. And if someone comes down who's not working that day, and they need to give something to someone, they can park there. They're under the 2-hour limit, they park there, they give the thing, and they leave. And the added kicker is that as part of this, that they would keep their employees from violating the parking ordinance. So that if someone said, the crew member of the OLAD parks there all day and just takes ticket after ticket after ticket, in theory, they have to pay all those tickets, but the extra language would be saying, you can discipline that boat owner for not patrolling their employees and keeping them from violating the parking ordinance. And I think that's what you're trying to keep. You're not trying to keep them from going down and using a spot for an hour and then leaving the way anyone could. You're trying to keep them from just saying, screw it, I don't mind paying, I don't even know what the tickets cost now. I don't mind paying those tickets, and I'm just gonna park there. Well, this gives the extra leverage of saying, no, you're not.
I understand the strategy,
Does,
and that's harsh. And if you're gonna do that to day sailors, you're gonna do it to all the other business
right,
owners in
a
town?
victualer's
And I'm not
license
saying-
gonna
I'm
have
just-
that?
Yeah, I know.
I'm saying that there is a basis for doing it, but then the victualler's licenses should also come with a kicker.
Right.
It's
I
an
agree. I mean, if you're gonna impose it on one business owner, you should impose it on all of them.
Yeah.
And that's not under our purview. It's not.
Yeah.
So perhaps in terms of our recommendations to the select board, we should, we should indicate that we would like to include this, this stipulation that they prohibit their employees from doing it. However, we've identified that that is something that needs to be looked at across the town, if it is to be imposed here. Does that make sense? Because I agree, you can't,
it does.
you could tie it to
It does, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but then the problem is, the law offices don't need anything. So their employees get to do it, but the restaurant doesn't.
Right, exactly.
So why are we going down this rabbit hole?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, the point is that the space being occupied by employees and business owners that could be occupied by a money spender.
I get all that. The point is, not all businesses are regulated. French and Brown's not regulated. Lawyers, accountants, whatever, all these businesses. Because I used to just take the tickets and Smitty would come by and hit me up with my $80 for 3 months of parking, and it was just part of life. And there was nothing that the town could do to keep me from doing that. So why are we treating boat owners or restaurants any different than all the other employees around town?
It may be because.
Including fishermen.
Yeah,
If
but I
we're
think-
talking about parking down at the town.
Well, I
That's at the
think the
town limit.
reason is because we have a license agreement and the town has the ability to include it in there. So like you say, with a vitrular's license, sure, we could include that in there also. But that's way beyond our scope and purview.
No, it is, but we could still say, this is a great idea, as long as
Becomes
the
fair.
selectmen think about all the different licensed businesses that should have similar
Good point.
restrictions.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, we can't do it, but the select board ought to be thinking about,
And
do we want to get into this?
I think where a lot of this is coming from is that the town has a new parking lot. So we're trying to like shift parking over to the new parking spaces.
Where is it?
At the mill.
And this committee, this committee has purview to have a chance to discuss and then, advise the select board on harbor issues, especially this one in specific.
But this really isn't a harbor issue.
Well, there's certain cases, because you're talking about verbiage.
You have
and-
harbor leverage, but how the parking spaces are used is a general issue. It has nothing to do with regulation of the water space.
Yeah, no, you're right, but this particular thing has to do with day sailor license. That's why we're discussing it.
Right, and I don't think it's appropriate to use the day sailor license as leverage to control parking if
A broader issue?
nobody else is doing it.
Definitely a broader issue. So then vote that way.
Yeah.
There's also,
So then why does our license agreement also give them a parking permit? If we can't restrict them.
Because that is part of, and I'll go to the fishermen, where they really having a spot where they can haul the traps is part of making it work.
It's our office.
Yeah,
that's
we've identified a space as important to the business operations of these harbor businesses, day sailors, fishermen, et cetera. A single space is currently seen as an important item.
Well,
Ancillary
apparently-
spaces for the employees is not.
Apparently, it's an important space for restaurant employees also, because that's where they park.
Yeah.
So-
It's not,
Why?
it's not important for the operation of the restaurant. The restaurant will continue to operate, successfully without that space, whereas these day sailors,
Won't?
they could not. They might not be able to operate successfully, safely, if they didn't have that space. That is
The
correct.
original intention was for a place to keep your ticket table, if the inclement weather comes in, as it does, minute by minute in the summertime.
brochures.
You have no other place to
Emergency.
put yourself. or your-
And in the last 3 years, just the threat of these guys kind of hearing through the grapevine that's just gonna happen, their employees and their deckhands do not park down there anymore. So I would say you could, don't use that in your equation.
Won't be punitive, yeah.
Very rarely you see that.
And we're very active telling our customers not to park in there either. We tell every one of them all the time, like, go park in the all-day parking. So we're very proactive on that.
Seems like the system is working because the day sailors are taking that step.
I'd like to just interject, while we're talking about parking, touch on the fisherman thing, and also another thing that I observed, there's a 15-minute space in front of French and Brown, and it rarely gets violated. It's almost always available. You come around that corner, boom, there's a parking space. You go in, you come out, you're gone. It works. So we've got fishermen occupying, we've designated 9 spaces to fishermen that can be occupied or unoccupied all day long. And you get a $20 ticket if you park your car there, go down and get your gas tank, come back up, and you're only there for 10 minutes. Fishermen only need access to that space for the sake of loading and unloading. and they can take turns doing that. You could designate 2 spaces for fishermen to load and unload. When you're done unloading, put it someplace else. I mean,
Right.
9 spaces for fishermen who are supposed to be full-time, and nobody's riding herd on whether or not, nobody's looking at their tax returns.
No
to
argument
determine-
here, no argument
Determine
here.
whether or not they're full-time fishermen.
Yeah.
They don't look at their tax returns, nobody is.
And they park in the morning and they're gone till 3 o'clock, and it doesn't, Ron's right, it doesn't need to be there all day. They're gonna bitch and moan if you change that, but.
The simple thing is, if whatever you're gonna impose on day sailors, do it to the fishermen.
Well, so my question there would be, will we be looking at an agreement like this for the fishermen later on down?
I don't think we can look at this agreement without looking at that one.
Is there a fisherman agreement?
No, the fisherman is.
Fisherman license?
Yeah, there's a fisherman license saying, here's what you need to do, and here's, but it's nowhere.
That's just in the ordinance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nowhere near as lengthy as the day sailor.
It's not a licensing, we don't have a licensing agreement.
It's just a permit, it's just, you fill out your permit, and then you're done.
Yeah.
It's a permit, yep,
And it's $400.
Annual,
Annual.
annual, yep.
It's $400.
We could,
Just submitting them right now.
Spaces are in an ordinance or what?
Well, they get a parking spot with their permit.
Right, but is that established?
But it
in
would
the
be within-
ordinance,
it would
which
be
is
within
one
the-
process versus something the select board just votes.
Well, that I don't know.
it would be within the purview of this committee to examine potentially changing those permits of the fishermen, I believe. Don't you think? I mean, that would seem like that's,
We give them some notice, because they're not going.
of course, yeah, absolutely. But,
it's
because I
so-
believe that I mean, you would know, Richard, don't we? We recommend, this committee recommends the permits that were, the applications that were applied from the fishermen.
Yeah.
And so at that time, we would say, we're gonna look at changing these a little bit.
We look at them, and
Yeah.
I think there's rarely been much discussion.
Right. But there could be,
Yeah,
since we
there
do
could
look
be.
at them.
All right, that's a separate issue, and I think that is on our work plan for the future.
The fishermen,
The fishermen, yeah.
and the other, what I call the other yacht club.
Okay, so,
Right. The motion.
what is the motion? The parking options are, 1, as is,
in the current agreement,
Which is one spot
One spot.
yep,
and employees are prohibited.
with discouragement.
option 2, what we've been discussing. I don't, you're saying it doesn't read the way it's supposed to read, the way we want it.
If you're trying to say that they can't park for more than 2 hours, you need to move the 2 hours in front of the comma.
So, 2 hours. With the exception of 2 hours?
Nope.
How's that go then?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, so.
That doesn't, why would we even have that option? Why don't we just eliminate that option, because that is the parking ordinance?
It's crossed out too. I don't have my glasses.
It says, "The licensee shall prohibit any employee or agent of the licensee or any crew member of the day sailor vessel from parking in the parking spaces at the public landing for more than 2 hours from July 1st to September 31st."
Well, there it is. No commas in that one.
So in June, employees can park at will.
I don't understand why the difference between June and July. I mean, we're as busy in June and, we're busier in July, but June is still pretty busy. I mean, I don't understand why.
Parking wise busy?
Town, yeah.
I mean, yes, it is, but we really need more, if you wanna try to.
This is talking about the employees parking, and I assume that the dates relate to the fact that in June it's still cold and there's not that many tourists here, so we don't really care. It's July and August that you want to keep employees from.
I don't think the employees are an issue at this point because we don't let the employees park in the parking lot. So I don't think that, we all on the same board.
If you take the language out completely, it will allow people to say, well, if they reduce that, it's no longer, we don't have to do that.
No, well, you just keep
Keep
the
the
paragraph that
existing.
says that the employees cannot park in there at any time of the summer, not just in a
Right.
certain part of the summer. And then like, the other thing I wanna say about the, trying to put times for us to park in a certain part of the summer is like, in the summer, in the middle of summer is when we really need more the parking lot, because we do more charters, we bring coolers full of food, we have more activity, and that's where the parking lots are, you know, with more tourists, so.
I propose that we delete option one as it's stated here in our working document and have the option one as is, the original agreement, the current agreement, or option two, à la carte fee structure.
Just two options?
Just two options.
Well,
I second that.
I was just proposing that, I wasn't asking for a motion or anything, but, you know, Mark, you
Was the,
might have a
was,
reason for that, I don't know.
was the intent, if I remember the discussion previously on this, the intent was to find a way to restrict even the permitted use, the tag use during July and August. Is that
Yes.
correct?
yeah.
So I think, in terms of options, I think that is still a legitimate option to leave on the table. It's not the one that I'll be recommending, but I would say that it is still a legitimate that,
Yes.
you know,
And-
the use, the day sailor, part of this agreement, the day sailor gets a tag, you know, permit to use a parking space except from July 1 to August
Yeah, but
31.
those are the months that we really need the most.
I know.
You're on to something here, right? I mean, the point of this whole exercise, to have our options, is to show the select board that we have thoroughly discussed this option, this option, this option, all right? And we've whittled it down, all right? So if we just say, you know what, we're not even gonna list no parking as an option, that's gonna tell the select board, well, they didn't even look at no
I
parking,
don't
so
think it
let's.
does say that. If we vote to eliminate
We've
something, we
obviously
discussed
discussed
it.
Yeah.
No, the
And
select
if
board,
we just keep sort of floating things
They
to
wanted-
them, it's
that's-
not really making a
Well,
recommendation.
they wanted, the select board wanted to see,
Wanted to
they
see
asked specifically for the options, and then tell us
Yes.
what one you recommend.
Yes.
So I think they will appreciate seeing what the options were that we
I
deliberated.
understand that, so you can vote on each one, dump,
Exactly.
and go with.
Right.
Or whatever.
Why don't you just vote for one to go with?
But leave it as an option, like,
Want to pass the options that you talked about onto them,
right, yeah.
so that they see you talked about it.
And then-
you recommended this one. That's
yes,
important.
yes.
Right, so you can either have one motion that says, we decide to dump, and recommend, or you can have three motions, one to dump, and one to recommend. Either way, the minutes would reflect to them that we actually thought about them all.
They don't look at them.
I'm confused.
They're gonna look at this, they're gonna look
You
at
know
what
that, Steve.
our options are.
It's you guys that
How
are
we
confusing
vote.
me.
They don't have time. They don't have
Missing what it
Yeah.
is they get.
Yeah.
But
So, me
it does
too.
not seem to be rocket science to me.
If they
that we
don't
can-
trust us to have discussed it and put forward our strongest option, then
I
that's
guess I would like to,
It's a lack of trust, I just think that they want to be informed
Thorough.
as to what did you talk about?
I would like to make a motion
Exactly.
that we have three options. One, leave as is in the current agreement. A second option that would restrict the day sailor permit, parking permit that they receive as part of the agreement to the months exclusive of July and August. And then the third option being an à la carte fee structure. Those are the three options in the motion, but I would also move that we accept that we recommend option one. Leave as is.
Are you proposing that we pull their parking permit for the busiest months?
I am proposing that as an option. Yes, I am.
That's an
That's
option.
what was proposed in that, what he read.
I think we
Which
can
is why we
take a
all
vote on
choked.
that and eliminate that right off the
Yeah,
bat.
may I ask why you recommended that one?
I'm not recommending that one.
No, that's
I
an
am
option.
Those are the
We're
options.
getting so lost in semantics here that it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
exactly.
Saying that those are the three options that we are choosing. And that we are considering. We are not choosing it, we're considering those
Okay.
three options.
So,
I think anything you
Let's-
present
let's-
to the select board, it comes with it that you thought it was a good idea, it was worth
No.
talking about.
no,
Worth talking about, because as I do believe that is worth talking about.
I don't think the idea of removing their parking agreement in the busiest part of the season is even worth talking about. I don't think that's something that we should acknowledge that we gave time to.
Well, I mean, we just gave time to it.
okay, but if you do
Get too
that,
much.
if
Too much already.
if you do that, Ron, then that's telling the select board that we didn't even look at it, and they're gonna review this and say, you know what, parking's always been a problem there, let's just wipe out the parking.
I just don't understand why what it is they're gonna be getting from it. If they don't read our minutes and they don't read our motions, then what is it?
This
I get that, but-
document listing options,
Point of order.
recommended by
Mr. Chairman.
committee, 5-0.
Speaking of time, I've got some constraints today. I apologize for interrupting and for saying I have to leave, but I do have a question before I did so, and that is whether or not you had anticipated someone from the Select Board being here today to talk about defederalization.
I did, yes.
And no one's here, is that?
Correct.
And you do not, at this point, anticipate anyone being here? Okay. I think that's a problem. And with that, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a very big problem, the way the whole thing was handled, and the complete lack of I almost made a joke earlier that, well, why don't we do the fisherman thing by just posting on the wall over there and then voting on it an hour later and saying, well, everyone had notice. It's
Exactly.
ridiculous.
People ask me, aren't you on the harbor committee? You're reading about it in the paper?
Yeah.
Not only that,
But-
but if you view the minutes of that meeting, it looks like there were at least 3 select board members that were taken off guard.
Yeah.
I watched it, but it's getting way too complicated. The idea that, I don't know if we're proposing that, we say everything's an option for them. Why don't we just say we considered option 1, option 2, option 3, we recommend this,
Great idea.
period.
Yeah.
And then they know we talked about them, we considered them, but I don't want, when I feel strongly that taking away the little hanging permit for the 2 months when they need it most was an option that we're recommending the select board consider. Sorry, I'm not recommending they consider it. We considered it, and we think it stinks.
Correct.
Why can't we just express a clear opinion that
You can, make
talked
the
about
motion, make the
1
motion
and
and have
2.
someone second it and vote on it.
That was the motion.
Why are we talking about this for a half hour?
That's what he suggested.
That was the motion.
Is there a motion on the
You
table?
keep, the problem with the motion was that it acted like there was one thing we rejected, and there were 2 options that we were forwarding to them. I think we should say we considered option 1, 2, and 3, and I don't even remember which ones are which now, and we recommend option whatever. Period.
All right, so option 1 is leave it as is. Option 2 is,
Restrictive.
Yeah.
restrict parking for July and August? Option 2, restrict parking July and August.
To 2 hours, as it's stated here. Shall prohibit any employee.
No. What option 2 was saying was, we're keeping the honcho at only 2 hours.
Right.
They can't use their hanging permit.
Say that again?
For more than 2 hours.
more than 2
It's
hours.
as
I understand
presented.
what option 2 is, that it keeps the boat owner's hanging permit from being exercised in the 2 summer months.
July and August.
For more than
Yes.
2 hours.
So that's option 2.
Yes.
And then option 3 was to make it à la carte pricing, which is not like really an alternative to, it's just another
I'm
option.
just calling that a charge
That we
additional fee.
considered all 3 of those options, and we recommend keeping it as in the present format.
Second.
All in favor?
Now you gotta go back to fees.
Okay,
If you're gonna take away from the
disregarding
summer,
your
you have to
text
reduce the
here.
cost.
That you listed as an option. I don't know if you want that in there or not.
Which is why it shouldn't be.
It could be a 4th option.
Well, that's what he's saying, restricting parking for July and
I think
August.
the way I heard it was it's the permit, the tag, the permit.
Yeah, restricting the
This is
permit.
not addressing the permit here. This is saying an employee from parking for more than 2 hours in July through September.
Well, basically, I think that is what that's saying, but it's,
Okay.
yeah, I understand.
Oh, okay. Whatever, you'll sort that out.
So, option one,
Is the
5-0,
recommended option.
5-0 vote.
Okay.
And I also
Thank you.
think maybe we should include commentary that option 2 was strongly discouraged by all members of the committee. It was an option, but it was,
I don't even know who
It was frowned upon.
I don't,
where did it come from?
let's keep it simple.
well, I don't want them to even
No, I think the.
visit it. Yeah. And give it, as Ron said, putting it out there as even a listed option gives them an opportunity for them to then waste some more time on it.
Well, I got the impression that these options were
already
their
out.
suggestion.
Yeah, a lot of it's already out there.
Well, then
all
we
right?
should
There's-
say, and we're strongly in disagreement around option 2. and
The
want you to
general
rescind it.
consensus is that, you know, and it's just human nature, right? Their businesses have grown and become more successful and more successful. So they're taking up more space and more town.
Did we hear what Elliot said? The parking warden himself said that other businesses are taking more than these guys.
That was another issue.
It is a totally other issue, which is why I don't want to
All
hear
right,
that.
so that's passed. Ready to move on to second vote.
I do have one question here about item not seen here. What if the licensee of a day sailor is not using the license? There's no boat in use.
First
Have a
paragraph.
license.
Wait a minute.
You're right.
Is that not in the?
We
Oh,
talked
wait,
about
wait a
that.
minute, what, you're talking about the second boat?
No?
No, I'm talking about the day sailor boat. I have a day
Okay.
sailor license and I'm not using it.
Yep.
How do we feel about that? Is that okay?
No. And should that be in the day sailor agreement, or should that be in the commercial passenger vessel license agreement? Should that be in the larger one? I mean, wouldn't that be the same for any?
Any of them?
Well,
Well,
it could be part of the review process. Oh, hey, you didn't have your boat in the water this year. We noticed that. But I think it's an important thing. And I'll even state that I think if you don't have your boat in the water, then you shouldn't have a license.
Unless, as an example that we heard earlier, was they need a keel overhaul, so they're asking for
That's
one
right,
summer off.
if there was with circumstances considered.
But it
But,
should be,
you know, if you don't have a boat in the water all season, then why have the license? There might be somebody who would like to use that license, that spot.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but
Well, it's
isn't
not what we're
it
saying
kind
is
of
it's
like
not in the
moorings in
license.
general that
I know, and that's.
at the end of the year, you know, when you're applying for the next year, because you don't have an automatic right of renewal. Well, actually, we're changing the.
Well, it's 3 years,
I-
so it's 3 years with it.
So in the performance review, someone would say,
you can have a boat.
second year you missed it.
He didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't there.
The only guy that didn't do anything wrong.
Got a perfect record. No
All right,
complaints.
so on the second boat, the first paragraph, operation.
Wait, we're still on,
I know, I'm still there, bear with me. Operation and sales of a second boat must have and operate a commercial passenger vessel with a day sailor addendum. So if we take that terminology and massage that into the day sailor addendum.
Where did that come from? The thing you just said, where did it come from?
This is the second boat, ticket
okay.
sales.
We haven't covered this one yet. First line there.
Shouldn't that say?
Well, that addresses the second boat.
Right.
He's saying, put that into,
I'm saying somehow massage that so it pertains to a day sail, in the day sailor addendum.
I think you got, personally, I think you don't need to address this now, because I'm not, if said person puts in another request, application, I'm gonna say, I'm as harbor no. For 2 years running now, no boat, it's a wasted space. And I've already said that to other people that are interested, and they're gonna put an application in, and I'm gonna say, this is a good boat, and they're gonna run it, and they've got intention of running it, and
But I think it's a new issue from having multi-year licenses. That previously, if you wanted your license, you didn't use it, and you come in and you didn't say, I had a heart attack, that's why I wasn't here last summer, I'm ready to go. That you would have not renewed it. But now they get a 3-year license, and there ought to be something that would indicate that,
yeah, it's called the end of the year review.
yeah, but right now you don't have anything to really hang your hat on, because you just said they didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, it's true.
So there ought to be something similar to the language,
It's one.
well, it's
one
similar to
sentence.
the language on the moorings. That if you don't use your mooring for a period of a year, you can forfeit it. Because there you do have an expectation, year to year, you get the same mooring number. And so I would, it's a pretty simple fix to indicate that if
One sentence.
someone fails to operate the
Let's
business.
craft that sentence.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Write the sentence.
So I guess the first question is, how much of a time lag makes us worry? A month off, 2 months off, the entire season without being out there?
No, I would say if they can put it in for 4 days, then that's not enough. So I would say, just pick a number that you know it's gonna be, well, we're trying to make it so someone's not doing what Ray's doing. so-
Well, why do we have to overthink it like that? Why don't we just say something like, the intent of this agreement, and this is in the day sailor addendum, all right? The intent of this agreement is for a boat to operate a commercial passenger vessel.
No, too long already. Let's make it quick and dirty.
Keep going.
Quick and dirty.
Well, I don't even know that you want to use intent, because then you get too fuzzy. If you're gonna have something that gets people to lose their remaining years on their existing license, then it has to be pretty specific that they fail to carry out full-time operations for
If you don't run it,
more
they-
than 2 months,
Yeah.
just 2 contiguous months in the season type thing.
All right.
You've got the first line of the
So-
agreement now. The licensee understands this license agreement is a privilege granted by the town of Camden. We just add in right there.
Yeah,
And we will expect, and the boat will be operational for a minimal of 4 months or
No, I
4
would say-
weeks every year.
Yeah.
But you don't do it up front. You put it,
At the bottom?
No,
yeah, towards.
Could we just add this as a separate sentence in the schedule, section B? The harbor master schedule shall take precedence. Failure to operate a vessel in accordance with the master schedule shall be
vessel.
termed,
Failure to
operate
run-
the permitted vessel in accordance with the harbor master schedule, set schedule, shall be, or may be, or I'm not sure which term you want to use there, condition for,
Grounds for
grounds for
review.
removal, or whatever.
You can put in for less than 20% of operation.
Of the season.
Of the season, yeah, then you forfeit for the next.
It's, I know it's getting complicated, but I want to ask the question anyway. If someone has a heart attack and says,
Just say- just-
I can't do it this summer, period,
Use the same language that we have for the moorings.
but let me just finish. So if I'm a boat owner, I have a heart attack, and I tell you in April, I've been told I can't do any of this stuff this summer, are you going to take them off the master schedule?
No, we can put that in the language.
No, but I'm just asking you. If I tell you in advance, I can't operate this summer because I just had a medical problem and I can't run a boat, are you taking them off the schedule, or are you going to leave them on the schedule so that next year you haven't mucked anything around, but you just know that whenever Bob's boat would be coming in, you have flexibility to let other people,
Currently, I would leave them on the schedule.
I,
I'm sure other people would would come in and
Right.
say, can I use this, can I use that? And if it's okay with everyone, we'll.
and you would leave them on the schedule because essentially
They've come to me.
they've told you in advance, they have a legitimate excuse. And if someone doesn't bother to come to you, doesn't tell you in advance that they're not gonna be around, they just don't put their boat in the water, and then the next spring they come and expect to be right back on the schedule.
I think there should just be a simple requirement to advise the harbor master if you don't intend to sail for the season.
And with his
The
permission.
licensee does not intend to make use of this agreement. They are required to advise the harbor master of that. There's two circumstances. You either made a conscious decision, well, I don't want to do this anymore, or you had a heart attack, or the Coast Guard says
Yeah.
you got to replace these 3
Right.
planks in your bottom.
That's a perfect idea. That's the way it should be written, is that
So-
the licensee is not going to operate for the season. He must contact the harbor master in writing, and the harbor master may, deny the request, and, terminate,
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is that if someone if someone indicates in advance,
Yeah.
I'm not using my license this season,
Yep.
But it may only be temporary. He
All
may
right.
want to.
Right.
He's got a
But the
3
point is, do we really want to get into judgment, or do they have to notify you in advance when they will not be using all or part of the season? Because you could, again, depending on the medical emergency, someone might say, I can start July 15th.
Well, they can hire another captain too. I mean, that's always an option.
See, I think what we're trying to over-regulate this and overcomplicate it. So let's listen to this statement here, all right? If we add this right to the first paragraph, all right? It says, "The intent of this agreement is to operate a commercial passenger vessel." All right? So what that says, I mean, it gives us latitude and
Is that
leeway.
defined somewhere?
So if, what?
Is commercial passenger vessel something that we have defined? You need a commercial passenger vessel
Well-
license in order to do the
All right,
following
well, and
things.
we could change that, it could be to operate a day sailor, all right? With that said like that, it gives us a latitude so that if somebody has a heart attack, well, their intent is to operate this vessel, all right? But if somebody just pays for a permit to take up dock space and limit competition, their intent is not really to operate the vessel.
Well, I think you still want to have, and you can suggest that the attorney do language somewhere in this agreement because of the multi-year agreement, they need to establish some sort of minimum use of it or lack of excuse for failing to use it that would provide a basis for terminating succeeding years.
I think you should say that intent that's fuzzy. Description of the boat and the purpose gets fuzzy. If you fail to make use of this agreement by operating, then something happens.
Grounds for, review and potential
Yeah.
elimination.
Grounds
This is-
review.
this is
Well,
this
is
the obligation
there
that the town has to the day sailor, basically.
Is there something that establishes who these people are that get the licenses?
Right here in the agreement.
Is it
They
all
signed it.
simply about, with the exception of the fact that they need to come into the town dock, we don't really have any say over these operations?
That's correct.
You mean as to how they actually function on a daily basis?
Any part of it. It's really just a lease to temporarily come into a dock and pick people up. And if you have a day sailing boat that you want to row your customers out to or whatever, then you're free to do that.
Right.
Without any, so there's not some
No, but this.
what I'm getting at is that nowhere is it defined that these people have to go out 5 days a week, 7 days a week, 1 day a week.
Right, but they've paid for that space, they've paid for the use of the space, and how they run their business is their business.
Right. So if someone wants to
Their signature
pay
is on
whatever
this
the full lease payment is, in order to run a business 1 day a week and fit on the master schedule 1 day a week, they're free to do that.
And what,
That's
Not
my
running?
question, that's a question.
okay, I guess I missed the question. And not operate, you mean?
Right, there's nothing that says that in order to apply for this or to have this, you have to be utilizing it to a certain level. It's just sort of assumed that everyone who does this wants to make money at it, and they don't want to pay the full lease price unless they're gonna be there 5 days a week or whatever they do. but it's just an assumption. So we don't have anything that, we're trying to say when someone's abusing it, they're taking up one of the licenses.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how in the years I've made it so people don't abuse dinghy permits and moorings, is I raise the price. You know, oh, no one's using they're not putting their boat on the finger float. Well, let's double it and see if they still want to pay that and not put a boat there.
Just that person's?
No, everyone's,
That's,
because obviously it's too low.
no, I don't.
No,
That's how I've done it. I'm just saying, I'm not saying if it's right or wrong.
That doesn't reflect disparity in income. I mean, come on, you're making it then so that it becomes an elitist.
Everybody gets penalized, but
So
I don't go with that.
we're back to the license agreement.
Is there a limited number of license agreements that you can, that's the town?
7-day sailors. I have a phrase here, failure to operate the permitted vessel. Well, I have in accordance with master schedule, but I don't like that so much anymore. Okay, there can be a scenario where you don't operate your day sailor per this agreement, but you
But you
have a
run your
second
second
vessel
vessel.
agreement,
Yeah, that's what I
second
think.
boat agreement also.
You're buying
And you
one for
do
the other.
operate the second boat. And you're allowed to sell tickets for the second boat,
And why is it that you're doing that?
so
Who
that you can
knows?
sell tickets for the second boat
Off the public landing.
at the ticket table up there.
Why isn't it second?
And that's why on the second boat addendum, you have that first paragraph.
But does that second paragraph actually say that there's a boat that's operating? Must have an yes, okay.
Don't know if I can answer that question. Why?
So I have licensee may
Well, it was an
and/or
issue.
will be terminated if vessel does not operate for a major percentage of the season.
For a majority, maybe?
That one thing, yeah, but let's face it, if you're gonna run for 10 days of the season, that's not enough.
Do we have anyone who is paying the money but not actually
Yes,
running an operation?
yes. The vessel Sally did not use the dock once this year.
And that was, why did they do that?
Or last year. Last year, I think they used it once.
And why would they do that?
They would do that so they can then run a second,
Well, why didn't they make the second the first boat?
because it does not fit the requirements to use that dock, it's too big.
But it can use,
So-
they sell the
Sell the
tickets.
tickets.
But they don't come in.
The second boat doesn't go to the
Yeah,
float.
so we have the situation right now, we could write this to fit that situation, and then change it in the future if we want.
On the second boat addendum, operation and sales of a second boat must have and operate a commercial passenger vessel with a day sailor addendum.
Well, then that's good, but there's no penalty for not operating that first
Yeah,
boat.
he does have that.
He does have a permit, but he doesn't use it.
That's why it can't be in the second boat ticket
Have
sales addendum. It
and
has to be.
operate.
But this doesn't say that they have to
Okay.
operate.
Well, then there's no second boat.
What defines operate?
I don't care about the second boat, this is the first boat, because without the first boat, you can't have the second boat. So if you don't use the permit for the first boat correctly, you're gonna lose it, and if you lose it, you can't sell tickets for the second boat. So all we need to do is say, in the day sailor license, that licensee may and/or will be terminated if vessel does not operate for a major percent of the summer season. That's up to us to decide, well, yeah, he used it 10 times. You go to the select board, you figure out when that's gonna happen, but it can be terminated at any time. You can put that into, the fact that if someone is all of a sudden dealing cocaine out of their boats, oh, we gotta wait till the end of the season to stop them. We already have it in there that we can stop them, so.
There's other rules that apply to that type of thing.
That's true, that's true. I hope you don't know by.
I think we all agree that you should operate your boat.
Yeah,
Or else
So
you
the,
shouldn't.
the only issue here is crafting,
Is coming up with the words.
yeah.
Right.
She can do
Where to
next.
put 'em.
Yeah.
I like the idea of putting it in the schedule, that it's honor and abide by the schedule, unless there's communication with the harbor master for extenuating
Yeah,
circumstances,
extenuating circumstances.
that they're
Right, but if they don't
operating.
ask for any scheduled time, they're abiding by the schedule.
So what about if we just put in section B, the new sentence, the final sentence, failure to operate a vessel per the conditions of this addendum, may result in cancellation of this agreement or something.
What does the mooring rule mean? Is there a certain
You have to use it
number of
You have
days?
to use it so many days, or you lose it, unless you have permission from the harbor master in writing.
Right, so why can't that come over, that they have to operate the day sailor operations for X number of days a year?
Yeah, I would say
Unless
for
permission
50%.
in advance.
Let's say for 50%, unless you, because no one's gonna put their boat and get it all ready and then just use it for 50% to try to make it. So I would say for 50%
50% of what?
of season.
Oh, the
But
schedule.
what is the season?
Schedule, well, it's 50% of schedule.
And the schedule has to be done, it has to be approved, on the agreement, so you present a schedule with your application. Well, what are you gonna be doing? If you don't, use that schedule for certain.
Yeah, but that has to be worked out in this.
No, it's already in the agreement, in the
But
application.
in theory, say I'm a new licensee. Well, my schedule, I can't just say, well, this is my schedule, because I have to work with all of you guys to make sure that everything's dovetailing. So I just think that you don't need to refer to the schedule. I do think you want to have a minimum number of days that they're operating. And unless you already know that the schedule runs, not the schedule, the season, for permitted access to the float runs from this date to this date. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah. It doesn't you need to have your boat out by this date.
Okay, so I would put a minimum number of days, figuring, and let's just use 50% and use what you normally, whatever your schedule is right now, whatever those days are, take half those days, and that's what your minimum operating obligation is.
But one of the requirements for the application is to present, what are you gonna do, what is your schedule wanna be? What do you wanna do, what are your times and days you're gonna be running? So this is one of the requirements for.
But then it gets sort of mudged when Steve actually works everyone's schedule. So you might say, I wanna have my things go out at 10 and 2, and it turns out they're gonna go out at 9:45 and 2:15.
Well, all the spots are pretty much all taken at this point, with all 7 permits out. All the spots on the schedule
So
are
in theory,
taken.
Sally
so-
is still on the schedule?
Oh, yeah.
You've allotted
Failure.
time for Sally and he doesn't use it?
Doesn't use it.
Failure to have a vessel operational at least 60 days per season.
Without written permission from.
No,
the
I
harbor
wouldn't say
master.
operational. I'd say they need to operate.
Well, my only concern is what if then someone doesn't actually have people to go out? The boat is there, but they don't actually have, are we then gonna have people saying, oh, well, they didn't go out, so they're not operational,
Well,
you know?
operational means you have the boat there and you're selling tickets. Doesn't mean that you have passengers.
Yeah, that's
The
outrageous.
bottom line is, you're running your
But it's
business, your
not
boat's
even
in the
running,
water, it's showing up at the dock, and it turns out, whoop, we're at the dock again, and we only have
Operating
one
your business.
person, or
Okay.
no
All right.
persons. So I
If
think
they're
you
not
want
even
to be,
having a ticket table, they're never gonna sell tickets.
We know what we need to do. Someone come up with a sentence. Cindy.
Failure to operate a vessel for at least 60 days per season may be, without written permission from the harbor master.
based on
Maybe-
exceptional circumstances.
I think just,
I don't think you want
maybe-
to, I think it needs to be exceptional circumstances that's less than 60 days, meaning medical, the boat repair, stuff of that nature.
That's all part of your purview.
Yeah, that's part of my purview. Keep going. Someone write this
Failure,
down.
failure to operate a vessel for less, failure to operate for at least 60 days per season without written approval of the harbor master may be grounds for termination of this
I
agreement.
think will be.
Well, there's the, that's where you get to the may, shall.
Shall be subject to termination, and you could even state of the license by select
Yeah,
board
actually,
action.
could we determine only select board can
Yeah,
terminate, so
exactly.
shall.
Shall be subject to termination of the license by select board action. That's, well, I would,
Shall be subject to, there, you're
because
giving it
then you can take into consideration extenuating circumstances, a medical issue or
I like that.
keel.
I would put what Josh said with the extenuating circumstances. Not list what they are, but just, so that it's not just your whim, that we're talking about a reason why someone who has a permit can't operate for at least 60 days, it's without extenuating.
Put it in. I don't care.
Can't say shall be terminated by the select board.
Yeah,
Just
it's
say
a
maybe,
may.
maybe.
May be
Yeah.
The lawyer will decide which word.
I would say
to
maybe,
use.
yeah, exactly, that's
Yeah, we've
better.
been through that,
That's
the
better.
difference between
Okay,
shall
can
and
you,
may.
can you read that sentence back to me? I really like that.
I only have I only have the end of it.
Okay, let's say it again.
Well, I have the beginning.
Failure, go ahead.
Let's do this. Yeah, let's wrap this one up, because this is taking too
Failure
long.
to operate a vessel for less than 60 days may,
Without,
No, failure to operate a vessel for at least 60 days. not
Permitted
less than-
vessel.
for at least 60 days.
At least 60 days.
In any given season.
In any given season,
Okay,
at least 60 days,
without written permission, without written approval.
Without written approval from the harbor master explaining the exceptional circumstances.
yeah, we're getting too wordy.
Just harbor master
Yeah, harbor
permission.
master shall be,
Operate a vessel for at least 60 days.
a permitted vessel that fails to operate for at least 60 days
Without extenuating circumstances.
Without,
and written
Yes.
good, without,
Yep.
perfect.
from the harbor master shall be subject to termination of the license.
From the select board.
A vessel that fails to operate for a minimum of 60 days
Get in, that's true, but it's better than
shall be
nothing.
subject to termination of the license by select board action.
Policy is better than,
And that leaves it up to the select board to decide.
It is up to the select board. Now it's in there. You made this a better.
Failure to operate a vessel for at least 60 days without extenuating circumstances
And approval of the,
per season, in a season, in a given season.
the failure to make use of this agreement.
No, I wouldn't.
No, that's
Failure to
operate.
operate a vessel for at least 60 days
The permitted.
per season without,
All right,
extenuating.
Extenuating.
without extenuating circumstances may be caused
written-
for,
And written approval
And written
from the,
approval. Yeah, without extenuating circumstances and written approval from the harbor master.
I didn't even leave the
It's a little over, but that's okay. I
works.
think it's fine. Shall be subject.
Well, that's grammatically, it doesn't work, but that's the idea.
that makes it excellent statutory drafting.
You get the idea.
Shall be subject to
Subject to
termination by the
termination.
select board.
Of the license.
failure to operate a vessel for at least 60 days per season without extenuating circumstances
And
Prior written approval.
without, that's like without written approval. It's for 60 days per season without extenuating circumstances and written approval.
from harbor master.
From the harbor.
Grammatically, that's saying without written approval.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't really need extenuating circumstances, right?
Without 60 days per season.
Vary the extenuating circumstances.
without extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
No?
I don't think you want to just say he has, whenever someone has, the basis is required to give approval, you have to have some sort of standard for that. But it begs the question, I think we were talking about,
All right,
no, we're not. I was thinking, we were talking about blocks where people just disappear, but if someone says, I only want to run it, again, you can get the extenuating circumstances that say, I can only do it 3 days a week. Well, if, I haven't done the math, that's
that's what they
okay.
want to do, why not?
You know, you want to pay the money, you're using it, and you've got extenuating circumstances while you're down at that level, then fine.
I think you're in way into, failure to operate. Okay, we have, I mean, I've seen seasons here where it was thick fog every day, every day.
We're saying, yeah, your business is
Doesn't mean you
operational.
have
As
to
long as
take a
you're-
loop
you
out
hang
the
out, you're
back.
shaking your table,
Yeah, your table's there, your boat is there, you know, crew is there, you know.
you're operational. You don't have to leave the dock, it's fine, you know, but you're
You're trying.
You're trying.
Same thing if you
Your
don't
boat's in
have
the
to,
water.
Your boat's in the water, your table's
That's
set
what you
up.
can say.
one.
Heck, it's,
So,
boat must be in the
are
water.
you gonna describe all that in this sentence?
That's
my question.
But that's under the
Oh.
extenuating circumstances. I couldn't run. It's foggy.
And what are extenuating circumstances?
So,
I think
but-
that's bad news.
Without extenuating circumstances.
If you take that out of there, there's no news.
Well,
Failure to operate a vessel,
and that's good news.
failure to
Well, what we're
operate a
trying to do is
vessel
close a
for
loophole.
at least 60 days.
I
See
actually
that?
don't care about the person who's using it for, I'm just, if we only have 7 boats, I don't care if they're using it as a loophole for something else. I don't think someone should take a 3-year permit
Right,
that's not available to other people and then go
do something else.
sit on the dock by the bay.
We are making an assumption on a hypothetical,
Doing a
and we're
good job,
trying
though.
to write a restriction on an assumption of a hypothetical.
You guys care, that's what counts.
I mean,
Happens all
yeah,
the time.
And
Well,
Mr. Chairperson, at
just
9:45, I gotta go because I got the highway, I'm putting the cover on the welcome.
I gotta go anyway.
Yeah. I gotta go. Good meeting, though. Get up, I think we,
Well,
a lot of love in this group.
I think we need to meet every week.
point
To the
is, I mean,
agenda.
all we need to do is craft this sentence, and we're done.
You're
This is
halfway there.
ready
I
to
think we
submit.
put off crafting this sentence until the next meeting.
We could.
I think you said,
This is going to the town manager tomorrow.
I think you've got enough in that sentence
Yeah, I
that a
think you've
lawyer
got
can
it.
review that and make it effective.
Yeah.
True.
The lawyer will know.
And they're gonna have the lawyer
They're
review.
trying to say that you can't hold
alleviate your
a
trouble.
limited spot. If you didn't have the limited to 7 boats, then I don't give a shit. If they want to pay the price, then do it.
Expensive parking spot.
But the bottom line is, if you have a limited number of slots, then they need to be utilized. And they can come up with some sort of language based on the 60 days that will force somebody to use it or lose it.
Whatever.
And we
So-
can include an explanatory note.
right under this agreement, for a limited, for, percentage of the season should be reviewed by the,
Well, the harbor master, or the select board.
should be reviewed
Okay.
by the select board. You can't say that the select board shall terminate. If you're gonna do that, there's no point
It
saying
may,
it.
yeah, it may.
Right.
But he's got enough of that to
It
do
should
it.
be reviewed. The select board will do, they will either shall.
Shall be
But again,
subject
whether it's the
to
select board or
termination.
the harbor master, there has to be some sort of standard by which someone gets away with less than 60 days. Because if you don't write it, it's just like, the planning board.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of zoning and planning ordinances, and you can't say, the planning board gets to do whatever it thinks is good. You have to have standards to guide their discretion. And if you're gonna have a requirement that you gotta use it or lose it, you have to put some meat on the bones so that the people who are making that judgment aren't making up the principles they're applying. They're set forth.
This agreement, if not used by the licensee, shall be terminated by the select board.
I wouldn't use that.
Shall be subject to termination.
Don't tighten it up too much.
It's not a disagreement.
That's forcing
Yeah,
the
well,
select board to do
this isn't our,
something, and they all
yeah,
like
to
that.
write this kind of language isn't our forte, so we could just tell Bill Kelly, here's the idea, here's the intent.
Right, here's the point, is they gotta
Yeah,
use it or
right.
lose it.
And that sentence we crafted does that.
All right,
Yeah, exactly.
we got it.
You're advising them to do that, that's your job.
That would go along with. We need a use
And-
it, we need a use it or lose it clause here.
Exactly.
You-
Use it, lose it. You right.
that, huh?
Yep, and I
We're
can tell the,
recommending,
yeah.
we're recommending that you don't use it for 60 days, somebody gets.
There you go.
They're gonna say, why are you writing this? You can tell
Hey.
them. And they go,
So, license agreement finalized, day sailor addendum finalized, second boat ticket sales addendum finalized.
Well,
Second vote, item C, parking.
Item C, parking.
How does that
Prohibit.
fit with our,
That's the way it is. Second boat does not have parking.
any
that's,
crew
that's-
member of the, maybe second
Of the
vote?
second vessel, yeah.
Second vessel should be specified
other than
then.
day sailing.
The second vessel is not supposed to be running out of the public landing anyway, so.
Right, so why do they need to park
Why
there?
would they get?
Yeah, this is getting a tad ludicrous.
Well, we insist on going beyond a tad, okay?
Okay,
When
completely
it's
ludicrous.
completely ludicrous, you can speak up.
But if they can't go from the town dock, that's a point. Why do we even have a C clause at all? Take it out.
You can't enforce it anyways. so.
Exactly.
So it should be, I mean,
Take it out. If they're not.
take out the whole parking?
Why not? If they're not allowed to launch their second boat from the town landing anyway, right?
Yeah. That's the.
Why-
that's
Just
the-
as-
that's the
There's no
condition.
parking.
It's the same unenforceable as,
Out of a private.
Under 2 hours, it's not our business anyway. And if they're not supposed to be from the public landing, they want to pay a parking ticket, go for it,
Exactly, get it out,
take it out.
Take C right out.
take it out.
I make a motion that we remove C from the second boat addendum.
I second it.
Who seconded it?
Well, the only problem with that is you've got a requirement left, I believe, that you can't park more than 2 hours. You can't park down there at all. The crew members can't park at the town dock at all.
Right.
I think you can't have it in one and not in the other. Like, if we're leaving it in, if we're leaving it in the public landing addendum, we have to leave it in this, I think is the thing.
Well, the implication is that if they're not sailing from the town dock, then they're not using parking. But there's nothing to keep a crew member
From
on
parking
the second boat from parking at
at the
the
public landing.
parking space, parking at the town dock.
But the
Still
boat doesn't
legal.
run from that parking lot. Why the?
It doesn't matter.
Maybe the rowboat goes from there.
If
All
they can
right,
get out
so-
of the boat, maybe
Yeah.
they're just too lazy to walk from the fire station, I mean, you know.
We're not,
All right, how about if we reach a compromise on that and just eliminate each violation may be cause for suspension? Just leave the parking in the first sentence in.
Well, but we're saying not of the day sailor vessel, we're saying of the second boat.
Second boat, yes. It's just second boat. I mean, it's,
So what are you doing? You're leaving the first sentence in,
yes,
Changing it to second boat.
taking the second out.
taking out the each violation, yeah. Yes, good, because we took that out of the other one, I think.
Exactly. Right? Mm-hmm. Second boat done. Holy smokes, now we're on to,
Going. Because, yeah.
Mr. Chairperson, I unfortunately have to go.
do you have any quick harbor master report?
Everything's,
Memorial bench.
Who's the memorial bench?
There's 2 of them.
There was nothing attached.
yeah,
That I saw.
it's for less than, that's for less specs.
One for last.
His daughter wants to have one. I'd say yes for that one, no on the other one.
Who's the other one?
Oh, no.
Rick Stahl.
Still never saw him, never met him. I'm not even sure if I have a space for that one. But I can,
I'd like to vote to approve less specs.
seconded.
Unanimous?
And then there's that.
Yes.
We get that recorded.
Yep.
Approval of that.
Yep.
I think we should call a special meeting for the fee review. Hey, Bob, hold on.
special meeting.
So,
And also, the next regular meeting will be when?
First to Wednesday of December.
A matter of record.
Good customer. That's a good reason.
next meeting would be December 4th.
12/4, 7:30 a.m. Okay.
December 4th. Are we having another one?
Regular schedule. 4th.
Hey, who's your backup in your absence?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Really?
How long you gone for?
I'm gonna be gone for, until the 28th.
10 days.
28th.
So, I mean, this would be perfect. We only have half the board, so let's go through the fees.
I really should, yeah. I think, we all need to.
Let's call the meeting adjourned.
Are we gonna have a second meeting? An interim meeting? Or we're just gonna meet again on December 4th?